It's easy to look at this car and think, well, I'm just looking at another Audi. After all, perhaps compared to most of its peers, this brand has developed the most consistent look and feel for its entire range. But Audi says this Q6 e-tron is the most important car it's launched in a decade. And to understand why, you have to understand what's underneath. This familiar visage is just a Trojan horse which hides a whole slew of new technologies for Audi as a brand, and of course, a brand new platform as well. But for all that new stuff, does that actually make it a good car? After all, it is a family-sized, mid-size SUV. Well, let's take a look.
Okay, before we literally get to the nuts and bolts of the Q6 e-tron, let's talk price tags. The range consists of just 3 variants: the base performance rear-wheel drive, mid-spec quattro all-wheel drive, and the range-topping SQ6. As you can see, price tags start well above that of the popular combustion Q5, which sits below. In fact, the starting price of the base Q6 e-tron is higher than that of the top-spec plug-in hybrid Q5. This is no doubt because not only is the Q6 e-tron fully electric with an enormous battery pack, but it also brings with it an entirely new platform, which Audi shares with Porsche instead of Volkswagen. Dubbed PPE, this platform allows all sorts of things not available before, but there's no doubt the associated price tags here are deliberate. For one, the Q6 e-tron starts lower than the BMW iX and Mercedes-Benz EQE SUV, but it also sits alongside the curious Polestar 3. For now, that's a compelling offering considering the strong power outputs and charging capabilities the Q6 brings with it. But as it happens, no segment is safe from China, with the Q6 also soon having to face off against a potentially much more affordable Zeekr 7X, for example. When it comes to standard equipment, there's far too much to mention in this video. Check out the full review over at CarsGuide.com.au to see a more exhaustive list, but all variants get big wheels, enormous interior screens, sophisticated LED headlights, heated seats, and tri-zone climate with leather interior trim. You get the idea. All 3 variants even get the same enormous 94.9 kilowatt-hour battery pack, so stepping up the grades primarily results in increases to power. The mid-spec Quattro, for example, we're looking at today, adds a second motor on the front axle, as the name suggests, with a significant bump in power outputs, while the SQ6 adds even more grunt again, alongside some headline upgrades like adaptive air suspension. You can also customize to your heart's content with a list of quite clever option packs, but again, check out the full review at carsguide.com.au to see what those include.
Now, there really is no denying that this Q6 e-tron really follows that tried and tested Audi design formula that we've seen so many times before. But that's not to say that it doesn't change things up. It moves it forward in really unexpected and quite cool ways. I mean, the first thing that I like maybe the most about it is this wide, tough stance that it's got, and that's accentuated by the big blisters over both wheel arches, and also the way that the wheels really fill them up and go all the way to the edges. The other thing that I quite like is these animated LEDs. It's a subtle effect, but it does add something genuinely to the front of this car, and around the back there's something similar as well, with that e-tron GT style rear brake light that also can animate if you have the right package. And round the front here, just finishing off this whole thing, is this inverted grille. It's kind of a clever touch to indicate that this car is electric because it inverts the colors around. Instead of a standard grille look, it does have that body color in there, and it's accentuated by the highlight trim around the edges. So I think it's a tough looking car. I think it looks really cool, and you have to see it in the metal to see how it really separates itself from the rest of the Audi range. Now, when it comes to the interior design, Audi has finally moved away from that tidy but aging looking Q5 formula to something really quite modern in here. There's these massive screens, of course, standard for any car, but in Audis for the last generation or two, they have been super fast, super slick. They look really nice, but there are no physical buttons for certain things that we like to see. Always worth reminding. There's a new steering wheel as well, with these kind of haptic buttons. Again, this was a bit of something that Volkswagen had to walk back from, but Audi is trying here in the Q6. I think they do work better than the ones I used in Volkswagen products before, but it's worth noting that they have these like haptic feedback touch panel things instead of the kind of standard array of buttons that we usually like to see on a steering wheel like this. But this steering wheel's kind of, it's neat, it's new, it's got this minimalist kind of look. I don't mind it. The seats are nice and comfortable, as is usually the case for Audis, and there's sort of lovely trims all through the doors and across the dash as well, and kind of clever little hidden vents away here as well. But is any of this any practical? Well, let's have a look. So there's a large storage bay down here. You've got a small cup holder as well, a little tray for something like keys. You do have a volume dial, but that's where the buttons kind of end. Up here, you have a permanent touch panel for your climate functions. This isn't always the best thing to use while you're on the move. Audi has done some clever things in this screen in that they've got a little shortcut tray off to one side. It's very fast, it's very slick. All these screens have been thought about really well. So it's definitely one of the better touchscreen interfaces I've used. But it is important to note that there aren't those physical reference points for you to sort of jab at while you're concentrating on the road. And of course, one crazy feature that this car has, and this is standard across the range, is the passenger side touchscreen. So you can see all sorts of things in here. I'm never really sure what the point of these are. I don't know if you were a passenger whether you'd actually use this thing, but you can play games on it. You can see the nav. You can see various readouts about the car, just like you can in various other models. I never really understand the point of these, and it makes some passengers kind of a bit sick, but it is kind of a headline feature that it's got it. Like, it will get people pretty amazed about it, and I guess that's kind of cool. What else have we got? So we've got a strange kind of touch panel that replaces your hard switch gear for things like the mirrors and lights. I don't know if I love this. I feel like I haven't spent enough time with it just on this launch to kind of get used to it. So tune back in for a later review to see whether we actually like this weird touch panel thing or not, but it does work fine. Elsewhere, you've got large bottle holders in each door, and there's a further two with variable edges in the center here, and of course a nice closing cover so you can keep that design all nice and tidy. There's a large console box, and because this platform is fully electric, you can sort of go all the way under. Plenty of storage in there as well, and plenty of adjustability. I feel like it's quite easy to find quite a comfortable seating position in here. 2 USB ports, a wireless charger under there as well. It's ticking a lot of boxes. Let's go have a look in the back seat. Okay, here in the back seat, it's interesting because maybe I was expecting a little bit more. I mean, after all, this is a Q6, it's meant to sit above the Q5, and yet behind my own driving position here, I don't feel like I have leagues of knee room. Like, it's enough, and I'm 182 centimeters tall. I've got plenty of headroom, but it's just, I'm surprised I'm this close to the seat in front. There's also no kind of fancy headline features back here, like screens or anything like that we're seeing in a lot of rivals, but it's a nice sort of comfortable, standard luxury SUV sort of space. Now, one thing that is notable about this back seat is that you get that flat floor like we're seeing in a lot of other EVs, and that means that this center position is somewhat useful for an actual full-sized adult. The other thing that we get is two adjustable air vents here. There is a separate climate zone for the rear, which is always a nice Volkswagen Group feature that we like to see. In this Quattro version, it's got heated seats on the outboard positions as well, and there's two USB-C ports for charging underneath too. In terms of storage, we've got the standard kind of Audi nets on the backs of the front seats. I kind of prefer pockets, but nets are fine. We've got a large bottle holder in each door, like it's quite enormous. And then there's a drop-down armrest here, which can store your bottle with variable edges as well, which is a really nice touch. However, normally what we'd see here is on top of the drop-down armrest a ski port, but instead it's a split system which works like this. So you can actually have and the entire centerpiece fold down, which can be kind of useful for moving things like skis or long objects. So that's a neat touch as well. Shall we go have a look at the boot? Okay, the boot here measures in 526 litres, which sounds like a lot, and yeah, I think this is one of the areas where going a size up from Q5 really adds a bit of extra room. There is some things I appreciate about this boot though. Firstly, you get a nice roller cover, always a good touch, but this thing here, like a luggage net, you almost never see that. This is one of the maybe most underrated boot features you can get, because if you've just got a small object that doesn't fit in the cabin, you don't want it in the cabin, and you're gonna put it in here, this net thing will actually hold it in place when you're in the corners and stuff, and driving a car like this, you kind of want something to be secure. It's also got little nets for each side thing, so you can genuinely store objects there and not have them fly across the cabin in a cornering maneuver. And under the floor, there's no spare wheel, there's an inflator kit, but there is quite a bit of extra storage room down there. So again, if you prefer to keep your cables in the boot rather than in the front, there's somewhere for them to go as well. Of course, under this bonnet here, there's not a whole lot to see because of that front, but there is a clever little duffel bag, which Audi have given you for all of your charging cables, and it fits perfectly in this little spot here. There's not much to see, there's no cooling gear or electric motors or anything, but I'll run you through the specs of each e-tron grade. So you've got the base performance, that's rear wheel drive, that's its specs there. You've got the mid-spec Quattro, the one we're testing here, check out its power figures now. And of course, there's the top spec SQ6, that's the go fast one. Those are its specs there.
Of course, with an upgraded platform comes upgraded charging specs, and you'd hope so too, given the enormous battery pack size common to the entire Q6 range.
No matter which Q6 e-tron grade you pick, they all charge in 21 minutes. And that's because it has a crazy peak charging time of 270 kilowatts, with a focus on the battery maintaining that peak period for as long as possible. It is one of the fastest charging times on the market, especially considering this car's enormous battery pack.
On the slower AC charging standard, expect to charge up in around 7 to 8 hours. Given the battery size, it would have been nice to at least have the option of a 22 kilowatt AC inverter here, although not many 22 kilowatt AC chargers exist in Australia currently. The Q6 e-tron range isn't the most energy efficient I've driven either, with the official combined consumption numbers hovering at just under 20 kilowatt hours to 100 kilometers. On the raw numbers at least, it's certainly not a standout for a vehicle in this size bracket, but we'll reevaluate these efficiency numbers more thoroughly when we can get the Q6 e-tron back for a longer review.
So, for all its new technology, what is the Q6 e-tron like to drive? And I think Audi fans will be pleased to know that it drives just like I expected it would. It drives just like an Audi. Yes, there's 100 kilowatts of batteries under the floor, adding quite a lot of weight to this formula, and it is a lifted SUV as well, but it controls it so well. There has been some genuine effort put into this platform and the suspension and the weight management that makes it handle really nicely. So it's really put together in that sense. The suspension is compliant, it's quite nice, it's really good if you get to the SQ6 or you pick the option pack that gives that air suspension. That was perhaps the most impressive suspension option in the range. I'm in a Quattro right now that's got the sort of standard suspension. It's still very good, all things considered, but it doesn't really stand out like that air suspension package. So if you are looking at one of these and you do have that cash to go a little extra, don't necessarily go for the SQ6, you can option that air suspension on the Quattro or the base model as well. And to me, look, if I'm spending this much money on the car already, it's worth spending a little extra to get the best suspension on offer on this platform. There's just something about it. It has this like nice kind of waftiness over the bumps, and yet so much control on the corners. It's really quite clever. And that's not to say this passive suspension setup that is in this Quattro is bad. It's fine. It's just not a standout feature like the air suspension is. As you might expect for an Audi as well, the inputs are really nicely refined too. The steering, it can be a little disconnected if you really customize it to be quite light. There is quite a lot of electrical assistance going on here, but in most driving modes, it's quite tight and reactive and makes this big SUV feel more nimble than it probably should. So that's a really good thing. Elsewhere, the electric motors, we haven't driven the base one. We've only driven the all-wheel drive versions, both this and the SQ6, and they just, I mean, the thing that sets this car apart from something that's maybe like the Q4, for example, that's on the lesser MEB platform, or the other Volkswagen Group products I've driven, electric Volkswagen Group products I've driven on that MEB platform, is they just don't have that follow through. Like, you put your foot on the accelerator and yes, the acceleration is impressive, but it just doesn't keep going. This Audi keeps going, and this is one of the things that PPE probably brings with it, is much more capable, much more powerful electric motors that really offer that premium feel that's missing from lesser EVs. Overtaking is an absolute hoot in this thing. Accelerating is fun in this thing. It makes a big, long wheelbase car, again, feel nimble and nice and quick when you just hop on that accelerator and just want that follow through to overtake. It's got all that power there. Now when you push it in the corners as well, it's got heaps of grip. You can feel the width of the tires, the width of the car itself. You can just tip it into a corner and just have confidence that it's gonna hold on for dear life, and it does. One thing I will note, we've been driving a whole bunch of coarse chip roads here in Tasmania, and this Quattro, there's a little bit of noise, especially coming from the front axle. I mean, there is an option to go for an acoustic glass sort of setup, but that's hidden in one of the option packs. Again, that might be worth it, because I'm not blown away by the sort of ambient sound level in this cabin, and I was expecting to be, so that's just something to call out there. But in terms of the overall drive experience, yes, this Q6, it's tight, it's tidy, and importantly, it's familiar enough to feel just like an Audi should. Visibility is excellent out of the cabin, and that head-up display, well, that's a bit of a signature piece there. It does some really cool animations too. So there you have it, Q6 e-tron. Overall, it's fast, it's capable, it's grippy, it's agile. It does everything that an Audi should, and that's maybe the most important thing. In an era where rivals are doing more though, it's kind of interesting. Is this enough? Like, is it enough for it to be a really good electric Audi? Tell us what you think in the comments below.
As you might have come to expect from Audi, the Q6 e-tron features an extensive list of active safety equipment, all of which come standard even on the base car. Check out our full written review over at carsguide.com.au for the extensive list of gear. The Q6 e-tron also scores a more advanced array of 9 airbags, even featuring a centre airbag, although it is yet to be rated by ANCAP.
Now, the important thing you want to know though is whether any of this kit is well calibrated, and the good news is, just like other Volkswagen Group products, yes, the safety kit in here is really well calibrated. There's a little tug of lane keep assist every now and again. This car doesn't get the lane centering assist, which is available in Europe for calibration reasons, and honestly, I don't want that feature anyway. You probably don't want it either. It's more of an annoyance than anything else. The lane keep system that exists in this car is good enough, and I haven't been annoyed by any of its other features. The auto emergency braking seems to do the right thing. It all just works away in the background, and that's really important because it doesn't interfere with the driving experience, which is of course otherwise very nice and tidy.
Audi continues with its run-of-the-mill 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranty, although it also comes with 6 years of roadside assist, as well as an 8-year and 160,000 kilometre warranty for the battery pack. The big win though is the 24-month and 30,000 kilometre service intervals, having you back at the workshop significantly less. And the Q6 is also offered with a 1-year subscription to ChargeFox, granting you free public charging, at least for that time.
Now, on the face of it, the Q6 e-tron absolutely smashes this luxury electric SUV formula out of the park. It feels suitably sporty, it feels capable, it's got a nice big interior, it's got great charging specs and a really long range as well. But here's the thing. I took one look at this car and I felt like I knew how it was going to drive, and it drove exactly like that. It is such an Audi, and in this electric era where rivals are innovating so much, there is just something a little bit disappointing about that. What do you think? Has Audi done enough this time around? Do you really think that the Q6 e-tron should be something different or should innovate more? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And as always, check out the full written review over at carsguide.com.au.